Alright guys, episode 2 of whatever you call this. If you just randomly found this video, God, I look tired. We are rebuilding this bike behind me. Voila. It was a TB186. It blew up. Didn't blow up, it still ran, but it made some terrible sounds. Long story short, thought it was the top end, took it apart. The rod is gone. If you want to see how we tore down that, I went over every step. That will be linked in the description for that video. This video is we are dropping the motor, splitting the case, and yanking the old crank out. And then the video after that, we'll probably put it all back together. In the previous video I mentioned he might be doing another 186, but he decided we're going to go back to 125, so we got a stock cylinder, stock crank, piston, C-clips, wrist pin, and rings. I'm not going to go over everything I'm going to do. I'm just watch the video, I guess. We're taking off the right hand case cover, the left hand case cover, all the internals inside, so the clutch, oil spinner, oil pump, flywheel on the other side, timing, stuff like that. Then we're going to take the head studs off, and then we'll drop the motor, and I'll show you how to split the case and take the crank out. The tools for this, I use a Tusk crank case splitter. That will be linked in the description. That's what I use to push the old crank out. Obviously, if you have a press, you can do it that way. Just make sure you do it straight. You don't want to crack the case. I think that's it. So I will set this up and go over the tools and just get to it and just watch the video and you'll learn how to do it. Alright, let's go. So the first thing we're going to do is take off this exhaust. This is an OG. It's not supposed to have a low mount. He just drilled a hole. Common. If you have a low mount on an OG, you can also swap on SF rear sets, so you may not have it hooked like this. We're going to unbolt this. We're going to take this, your swing arm axle nut off. This is a 19, and your bolt down here is a 12. Now that this is off, you can kind of tuck it out of the way. I have it off so when we take off the motor mounts bolts. It's in the way, and it's easy to get the side cover off. Next, we're going to take all these bolts around the side cover off, 8mm. Side cover will come off. It's going to strip oil, so make sure you have a cap or a container, not a cap. I don't know what the hell a cap you would use to access the clutch and the spinner. You want to go around, loosen them all first before you take them all out. Where all the bolts out, we can do the clutch cable. Now that this bolt's out, you can just get the cable out pretty simple. Like that. Throw that out of the way, tuck it somewhere. The easiest way to get this off, if it's stuck, actually the first thing you want to do is take off your dipstick. That will get in the way. Now, push this lever, your clutch lever. It will push the case cover away. Oil drips out. Then you can keep pulling it out. So you're going to have, when you take this off, there's going to be this oil jet. Make sure it comes off with your cover. If you're putting a Katako cover on, make sure that is not in your case, because it only goes with the stock cover. And you're going to have a dowel pin here, it's still in the motor. And you're going to have a dowel pin, where's the other one? Here, it's still in the motor. So make sure you take those out. There's one dowel pin. Other one is stuck. We'll leave it there for now. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take out the spinner. 3 10 mils. Cover off. Then you want to take this gasket carefully. You can probably leave it on, but I'm taking it off. And then to get this off, you need a special tool. This is the clutch and spinner tool that Honda makes. This one is actually made by Kale. I have no idea. So the bigger side is what you use to take the oil spinner off. The smaller side is for the clutch. You can actually make one of these out of a socket if you wanted to. I'll have a link for this in the description. And you basically just put it on there like that and spin it off. I always put a nickel in the gear when spinning it off. Turn it by hand so it catches. You don't really have to worry about stripping anything. As the bearing falls off from the lifter plate. That comes off like that. There's a ton of clutch material in this spinner. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but there's a crap ton of material in there. Make sure you don't lose your nickel in there. Next thing we're going to do is 2 10 mils to remove the oil plate, catch plate for the clutch. And then now that the bearing already fell out, if you got to pull it out, clutch tool to leave it in there. You can leave all your springs in, you don't got to touch those. It's just this nut. That's the smaller side of that special tool, and then the 2 10s on the bottom. This one you can actually kind of hold with your hand as you loosen it. You can see the nut off. There is a washer in there. I forgot to mention there's a washer in the spinner too. You want to take all this off at once because it goes back on together. Drain that because there'll be oil in it. All your clutch is one piece. You can kind of see the washer in there. On your shaft, this was the spacer, reducer, whatever, will still be on there. Put it right back in your clutch. Next thing is we are going to take off the oil pump. 3 10 mils again. They're all the same size. They don't have to be. They can be mixed up. Don't matter. Now that's all apart. We can start taking the random bits of the clutch off and the spinner. So there's going to be this spacer in the back. You can slide that off. Keep that with your clutch when you're putting parts around. The spinner side's a little bit more tricky, so we have one gear that comes off. What just fell was your woodruff key, which is on your crank. You don't want to lose that, so put that to the side. Usually that stays on. Next is this spacer. Again, keep this on your spinner side. I'll show you how to put it all back on. The next thing is this gear. This is your oil pump gear, if you can get it off. So this is your oil pump gear. You'll see there's a little indent there or whatever. So put that to the side, and with that indent there is a little pin that people lose all the time. That's on your crank. You can kind of see it if the camera will focus on it. Don't lose this. Put it in a baggie, do something with it, don't lose it. Also, don't forget to remove your oil screen. So this side is done. Your oil pump will have dowel pins as well. Usually they stay in the oil pump, but if they're still in the engine, make sure you remove them. Make sure you remove the dowel pins from your side cover. There's still one right here. The other one I got off. I use new ones usually all the time, so it doesn't really matter if I damage it. Comes right out. That's pretty much it. You can definitely tell there's got a lot of junk in this motor. You can see a bunch of metal down here. So now on to the other side. Now we're going to do the left side. 12 millimeter bolt for the rear set. We're going to bang this out from the right side just enough to get this to rotate. We're going to take off the shift here because it's in our way, and then we're going to take off the sprocket cover and then the left side cover. This is a 10 mil. It's not supposed to be a 10 millimeter bolt here. So hopefully it's not cracked. Now we're going to take off the side cover. Note that these two bolts are shorter than the rest. You want to make sure you unplug the stator and take your cover off. It comes right off. Just like that. Set this to the side. Make sure you don't lose your starter spacer, your gear, whatever you call it, and this pin. And this is your starter gear. You can take this out now. Try to just keep it all together. You don't want to lose it. Now we're going to take off the flywheel, 17 millimeter. Nut, washer. Next is you're going to want to use a flywheel puller. I'll have this linked in the description to pull the flywheel off. Just threads on, and then this pushes the flywheel off your crank because it's pressed on when you torque it. So when taking this off, you're going to have this gear. There's going to be a needle bearing inside this gear. So you don't want to lose, drop, mess up your needle bearing. Don't lose this. Usually I stuff it in here and go put this somewhere. Next thing we're going to do is take off your timing chain tensioner arm. That's a 12 mil. This is all stock too. This is going to have 3 pieces. So you're going to have the timing arm itself. It's going to have a spacer that goes in the arm, washer, and the nut. So keep it all together. We'll take our timing chain off now. Slide it off the gear. Just like that. We can leave the lower wheel in inspect it, see if it's wiggly. It's good. That's pressed onto your crank. Everything else you kind of can leave. Same with the actual stock tensioning rod. We're going to leave that in for now. Next thing is we're going to take off your front sprocket and chain and unplug your neutral sensor and your speed sensor. So your front sprocket is 10 mils. And since the wheel's on the ground and there's a chain, you don't get to hold anything. Spin and pull until you can get the bracket off. And you can pull the sprocket off. It's going to fall, that's okay. Now we're going to want to trace these wires to the plug and unplug them. They're just, well, that's your kickstand, that's clearly cut, so we won't worry about that. You want to pull this one like that, and then your other one is your speed sensor. It's going to be 2 plugs, a white one and another bullet connector. Like that. Take that out of the way, you can leave the sensors there. That's pretty much it for this side. The reason why we moved the rear set is because we got to get the bolts that hold the motor in out and the rear set's in the way. The next thing is we are going to unplug the starter, remove the starter, and then we can unbolt the engine. So there's 2 10mm bolts here on each side. Usually for me to get it out, just a 1/4 inch extension and a hammer just to tap it out on the other side. Starter's out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to unbolt the motor. So there's going to be 3 14mm nuts. There's the top one here, and 2 back ones back here. One there, one there. Sometimes you have to hold the bolt on the other side, other times you don't. Depends. The 3 nuts off, we can push these back bolts in. So now we can take the rear bolts out, just pull them out. You'll see with the rear set moved, makes it way easier. So now the only thing holding the motor in now is that top bolt. The starter, a lot of people forget. And when you pull that out, the starter's connected and it's a pain in the ass. So now we're gonna just pull this bolt out while holding the motor from the bottom. Probably push it a little bit. That's the motor out. As it's dripping oil everywhere. So now you can see the motor is out. I have this nice block made. This is where the motor is going to sit. You want to flip it over, and you want to rest it flat. As I can see all the oil spilling out. Remember the dowel pins. This is where you want to make sure the dowel pins are removed, because when you're laying it down, they will get damaged. Now we're going to take the left hand side case off, held on with 8mm bolts all the way around, with 3 inside the case. I use my Ugga Dugga machine. You can do it by hand if you want. And note, all these are the same size, so you don't gotta organize them. Next, you're going to want to take a rubber mallet and you're just going to want to separate the case. Usually you hit it under here and then underneath where the starter is. Now that this is knocked loose, we just lift up. Be careful of your sprocket here, where your front sprocket goes, kind of shaft. You don't want to ruin this seal. Lift it off. Set it to the side. So we got the case half off. Easy, easy. Make note, you do not want to lose this pin. And there's a spring in there too. Can't really see it. There you go. Don't want to lose it. So take it out, put it somewhere where you won't lose it, because it's got to go back. You can see it's got bunch of metal inside. Next we're going to remove the crank. In order to do that, we flip it over because that bearing is pressed into the right hand case. And we're going to want to take out these dowel pins. There's one here, and this one is stuck on the other side, so you don't have to worry about it. And we're going to move the transmission. You don't have to. I'm going to. I know how to put it back together, so if you can elastic band it all together, it'll stay in here, but it's usually easier just to take it out because we're going to be flipping this over, and then it's all going to fall, or it could fall, and then you got to put it back in anyway. So this is our problem here. And watch the rod go in and out. It's not supposed to do that. I'm assuming the bearing in there, which is why all those pieces are everywhere. So we're gonna clean this pretty good. So I'm gonna put the camera back up, flip this over, and I'll show you how to set up the crankcase puller, which is what I use to press the crank out of the case. Because of my wood block, I'm going to remove the shift drum. You may not have to. I'm going to. It's just a simple bolt. You can actually remove this. This just slides out. The less you have in here, the better, especially if you're going to clean it. So if you do end up removing this, there's going to be 2 pins to hold your shift star. You can kind of see one of them, and the other one's on the drum. Don't lose them, because you'll need them. And you can take the drum out, just twist out. So make sure your piston is not in the way. I mean, this crank's damaged anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now we're going to set up the tusk crankcase separator, and that is what's going to push this crank out because this bearing is pressed in to this case half. The way it's going to work, there's going to be 4 screws screw into here, and then you center the case separator to push this out. So as you watched, I set it up. This is the, where is it? The Tusk Crankcase Splitter Separator. I'll have a link for this on Amazon. Not affiliated, I make nothing. This is what I use to press the crank out. So it's really simple. You just gotta screw the little ones in and then make it as level as possible. And all three, you can see they're kind of close. And then you just crank this 18mm straight down and it will push the crank out of the case. Let's do it. It's pretty simple. Just like that. Just press the crank out. How much that moves. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but that's not supposed to do that. Alright guys, I'm going to end the video here. We got it all apart. I'm going to clean the cases off camera. Just parts cleaner. It's literally full of metal chunks from the crank. But yeah. We're going to see. Yeah, look at it. It's just chunks of metal material all up in there. So I'll have all that cleaned. The next video we're going to mount the crank. I'm not going to go in great detail. I'll have a video linked in that video's description. I've already showed how to install a crank, so I'm not really, like I said, going to go through it. Same with the transmission. That video I did a 5-speed. We're just literally, you saw me pull that transmission out. We're literally just going to drop it back in, and then we'll reassemble the engine. We'll start with the left side, we'll go to the right side, and yeah, do the top end. We'll do that in the next video though, because I am tired, and this video is probably pretty long. So thank you guys for watching. I'll have links for parts and tools and whatever I used in the description here. Subscribe if you're not. I'd like to get to 1,000, that'd be sweet for there we go, for a YouTube channel that I've uploaded random shit on for years. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.